What's up, you beauties? Welcome to High and Wide Radio, episode 25 of season. 27. I had 27 in my head, and I left 25 in the script here, and I read 25. If you put it on the prompter, he's going to read it. My name is Jim Microphone, and I'm joined by the one and only Jack Smith and boy wonder Travis Ballinghoff. If you're not listening live, please make sure to subscribe, follow, and listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. And if you're watching live, say hello in the comments. And if you have not yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, be sure to do so. If you want to check out our site, maybe buy some merch while you're there, while you're listening to the show, head over to hwhockey.net. Find all of our social media links in one place at hoo.be/HW Hockey. All right, boys. We had a lot to talk about. Not specifically Flyers related, but maybe one of the most fun first rounds in NHL history comes to an end tonight, actually, with the Rangers and Devils playing in another Game 7. That turned out to be a hell of a series. I think last week we were kind of talking about, I think it was 2-1, and the Devils were kind of working their way back in. They actually took a 3-2 series lead. Game 7's tonight. But, boys, I know you guys watched last night. Who wants to start with this? Because it was an amazing, not just an amazing first round of hockey in general, but last night I think was a historic day in National League hockey playoff history with the President's Trophy winning Bruins, all-time best regular season team going out in 7 games to the Florida Panthers. And then right after, the Stanley Cup champions, defending Stanley Cup champions in the Colorado Avalanche, losing to Dave Hackstall and the Seattle Kraken. What an amazing day it was. I mean, Jack, let me ask you first, because you have some thoughts on the Seattle Kraken and who's coaching the team right now. So let's start off with that. Did you get a chance to watch any of that series, and did you see the game last night at all, Jack?
Just bits and pieces. And, I use it as an example when Hacksaw was with the Flyers. 2 minutes left in the game. Flyers up by 2 goals. A goal is scored. There is a play at the blue line. So if you know the rules, if you're an adequate coach, you probably don't challenge unless you're 125% sure, because if you lose the challenge, the goal stands, and now you're on the penalty kill. So what does Hackstall do? He challenges. He loses. So not only does that 2-goal deficit become 1, now he's on the penalty kill. Long story short, the team scores within 20 to 25 seconds, and they end up losing in a shootout. Common sense, don't do that. If you know the rules, believe in your team, kill a 1-goal lead, end the game in regulation. I use that as an example, as one of many examples, as to why he was not the best coach here in Philly. And this goes for every coach and GM for that matter. Your second tenure tends to be significantly better than your first. And I'm okay with Hacksaw figuring it out and doing things better in Seattle. But to make comments that he was actually like some kind of secret gem here is an absolute joke. And it really does get under my skin and grind my gears. He was a clown here. He didn't know the rules of the game. He started asshole lineups. He benched. I don't care what you say about Hacksaw wanted this guy and that guy playing. There's some truth to that. But benching Sanheim and Lindblom as often as he did, all it did was stunt their growth. The guy was unfortunately not given a lot to work with, but a clown. We've seen many coaches and many different people given not a lot to work with and make the best they could out of it, where he did the exact opposite of that. So for this Hacksaw is the best thing since Jack Adams. Very hard for me to stomach. It screams Gabe Kapler with the San Francisco Giants, and you saw what happened after they had their little miracle run. And I don't care what he does from here on out. Well, I kind of do, because people run with it. He could win the cup for like it doesn't make his tenure in Philly suddenly great. Okay, it's not, you weren't paying attention. You're trying to make something out of nothing to make some kind of, oh, I got you point, and it's not factual. Okay, I'm just going to say that.
I'll add to the Hackstall hate because I could not stand the guy when he was in Philly. I'll never forget he's yelling at the season ticket holder town hall. I think that was Andrew McDonald's a top 3, top 4 defenseman in this league, and no surprise he's out of the league the next year when his contract finally ends in Philly. The dude was terrible. I mean, you could add Ghost, you could add Konechny to them guys who Hackstall he just healthy scratched and benched way too often. It was like if you're losing by 2 goals, it's their fault. It's Lindblom's fault. It's Sanheim's fault. Konechny, Ghost. It's not on anyone else. It's not on Dale Weiss or Chris Van de Velde. It's on the star players. Even though
Yeah.
you kind of leaned to the front office here, but Hextall didn't really give him a lot of depth. But Hextall didn't put the guys in the right positions, in my opinion, either. The guy was a bad coach here. I mean, his strategy was terrible. It just, okay, give it to Radko Gudas, and he's going to fire a simple wrist shot at the goalie's chest, him and Luke Shen. I mean, it was pathetic to watch, and he needed to go. And just like Jack said, I mean, he was a bad coach when he was in Philly, and that doesn't mean that he couldn't look himself in the mirror when he got fired and reevaluate, reassess things. What can I change? What didn't I do good in Philly that I could change and kind of bring a different element in Seattle? And I think that's what he's done. But he was a terrible coach for the Flyers.
I think that's fair enough. But are you guys? You have to be at least a little bit impressed with. I mean, it sucks to say because hey, it would have been nice if it was here. Guy wins his first ever playoff series, and it's against the defending Stanley Cup champions with the team in its second year of existence. I mean, it's a little bit impressive. We got to give him some credit now.
Yeah.
You absolutely have to give them some credit, but let's not kid ourselves. The way they build these expansion teams from days of old, like I remember when the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Atlanta Thrashers and even the Nashville Predators came into the league, they did them no favors at all. They got the bottom of the bottom. It was almost like they had to pass their trial by fire to show that they belonged in the league. Nowadays, they're so worried about losing the fan bases that, especially with the cap, they are given an advantage, if anything. You see these teams scrambling to make trades and all that and whatnot. And be honest, we all kind of shit on the Kraken for how they went about things, but they kept some cap space. You know, Matty Beniers getting that number 2 overall pick has definitely paid dividends. Having the cap space to sign a Stanley Cup winning goalie in Grubauer, stolen from Colorado, certainly paid dividends. He's been one of their best players. Though some of the moves that I think were underrated were definitely Jared McCann. Like, my God, like the Penguins not know what they had. Like, you know, nobody saw him scoring 40 goals like that. And to be honest, just flat out beating Colorado is worthy of praise. It is absolutely worthy of praise. But I'm going to give that credit to the goalie, to Borkstrad, to guys of that nature before I give it to Hacksaw. I mean, it is what it is. And as I made that comment earlier about the overturned goal, you know, or the non-overturned goal, he overturned a goal, sure enough, the other night. And it was like, oh, well, he must have learned from his mistakes. So what a genius call that was. Looked pretty chalk to me, but, you know, we'll take what we can get because the argument is that weak that we have to throw whatever against the wall and see what sticks. So it's very aggravating. I'm not going to lie, because we're just going to ignore what we already know just for the fact of making a point. But if I'm going to look at it from an unbiased perspective, it is very impressive what they've done. And I almost say that begrudgingly because I feel like there's people out there ready to jump all over me, but I'll break it down. And yeah, they're beat a team they shouldn't have. They pretty much led the series. You know, they were in charge. And I know that Colorado's not the same team they were last year. I know that they didn't have their captain, and that's a lot. And they had a brand new goalie and whatnot, but they still should have won that series, and they didn't. And they play a lot like the Blues played, and that was Colorado's Achilles heel, and it definitely bit them.
I'm glad we started with this series because Twitter all day is pretty much just talking about the Bruins series. Like, I don't think the Avalanche are getting enough hate for, like Jack said, they should have won this series. And no, they're not the same team as they were last year. You're missing your captain, Landeskog. You lose Kadri. You lose a couple other guys, Nicole Bell, I should throw in there. But if you look at their record, like they were the hottest team in the league the last 2-3 months of the year. Like, they're a really good team. They should not have lost this series.
No. And Seattle scored first every single
Every
game of
game.
that series. So it's not like, why.
Never happened in Philly, by the way. So I'm not putting that on the
Oh,
coach.
never.
So I don't
Mike-
want to.
Massive issue here
Michael Neuwirth used to let in the first shot of every game.
from the red line. No, I'm just saying, like, there's no way he just flipped that. Like, come on, that's the players. Let's be real.
So I don't want to transition just yet. I kind of want to stay on the Western Conference, but watching some of these other series, and for example, the Bruins were heavily favored. There were times watching them where I'm like, Florida's going to sneak back into this, and in Game 7, Florida looked like the better team, in my opinion, for a lot of that game. Until about what was it, the end of the second, midway through the second, the Bruins kind of came to life a little bit. But watching Seattle, Colorado, Seattle never looked too small for the moment. They played right up to the Colorado Avalanche like they belonged in the playoffs, I thought, which, hey, maybe it's the players all kind of rallying together. And in my opinion, you can throw Dave Haxtell in with these kind of players where, these guys were all kind of castaways, if you will. Now there's the other side of looking at it like, Seattle got to handpick these guys. But on the flip side of that, 31 NHL teams didn't protect the players that Seattle got to pick. Dave Haxtell was fired a season or two before the Kraken were a thing, and they all got kind of mashed together and won. They came together and they beat the defending champs. As much as I just don't like Seattle in general. So, and I know, and these new teams that keep popping up, experiencing the success right away makes me even more bitter. I think it's, they don't deserve it yet. And I'm one of those guys. I know some people have different thoughts, but I'm one of those guys. You have to earn the right to feel that a little bit. You have to suffer a little bit. Maybe that just says more about me. I'm a little sick in that way, I guess, but
I don't think you're wrong. I don't think you're wrong at all. I mean, they've completely changed how you make, and I'm not against it. Like, it is what it is.
I am.
I mean, right. But I also don't know. See, and I agree, but it's also like you can't do it because people today, the millennials,
they'll lose
Gen
interest.
Z or whatever it is, like they're not going to have they're not going to be able to wait for a team to go through that.
No,
And
they
if
won't
you're
be
Gary
happy just
Bettman,
having a team. They need to win and yada, yada.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're Gary Bettman, you need this team to make money now and be competitive now. And the new rules, as much as I disagree with it, it's going to make them at the very least competitive. Unfortunately, I think it's made them more than competitive. It's made them like, we would trade in our current situation for that in a heartbeat, where in the past you'd never do that. You would get nothing but third and fourth liners, and maybe you probably get a top pick, but that's it. It'd be like, figure it out, and you're not willing to spend in free agency when the rest of your team's such dog shit. So you kind of take different approaches to that. That's why you go back to what, Tampa, Florida, Nashville, Columbus, nobody came out of the gate good. Nobody did, and now to see what Vegas did, and Seattle had one bad year and boom, here they are beating the Stanley Cup champs. It's like, well, look what they did in their off seasons. They made their team. They drafted very high and well, because how could you miss? And then they go and sign the Stanley Cup winning goalie, among other players. Like, well, that's nice. I wish we could do that. Like, it's the cap itself, the way we have the hard cap compared to basketball with the soft cap, or baseball with the luxury tax. Like, having an open checkbook is so much of an advantage now.
Yeah.
So, and I understand why they do it. You want to grab the fans, grab the city, make them believers and make them diehards now, and then whatever happens, happens. I totally get it from that standpoint. As a fan, it's bullshit, but what are you going to do?
Yep.
Yeah, I'll add really
I can't
quick.
look to Haxtell and give him that much credit. I mean, come on.
I'll add real quick. I think a lot of it also has to do with like how much teams are paying to get in the league. Like, Seattle paid $700 million to get a team. Like, obviously they're not going to want to be bad for a couple of years, but as a fan, I hate it. Like, I think teams aren't allowed to protect enough bodies. I would change things a little bit up. Every NHL team can protect a couple more players, and maybe you just, like, the first year, let's say Seattle first year in the league a couple of years ago, they're coming in, just give them the first overall pick. I think that would be fair.
I think,
or at least give them good odds,
Or if you're going to do expansion teams and you have like multiple teams and cities in mind, you need to give like at least I would say at least a 5-year window. And these teams need more than a couple years notice, right? So if
Yeah.
like you can't do back-to-back expansion teams in 4 years because then it's like you're punished for drafting well because you can't protect all your players. So it's kind of, it puts GMs in a shitty spot. And if you're not a good GM like Chuck Fletcher was, and I mean he got absolutely hosed when Vegas came into the league. Like Alex Tuck's a 40 goal guy now, and he gave him away for nothing. So if you're a shitty GM and you have expansions teams coming in, every 4 years, you're gonna destroy a franchise.
It's because they're putting emphasis on the new team and not. It's almost like Verizon or Comcast. Like they don't give a shit about their existing customers, but the new customers get all the fancy deals.
It's true. Let's move on a little bit here. So Seattle's going to be facing off against Dallas in round 2. Dallas defeated Minnesota 4-2 in that series. I didn't watch too much of that. I watched a lot in the beginning. The typical guys for Dallas were driving the bus in Ottinger, Heiskanen, Rupe Hintz, and Jason Robertson. That series, I liked it at first, but it kind of stayed that way throughout the series where it was just really tough to watch, especially when you have like we're talking about Colorado, Seattle going on, Edmonton, LA going on. It was just, that wasn't a priority series for me. So Seattle and Dallas will play in round 2. You guys want to give a prediction now, or do you want to wait till the end of the segment?
I say do them all at the end.
Okay.
But I would like to talk about our predictions for the first round right now. Go over what we had, because if you don't mind me starting, things were looking pretty good for me, except for stupid Dave Haxall and his Jack Adams like physique. Pretty much, I think a lot of people, except for us, which is funny, all three of us, a lot of people picked Minnesota to beat Dallas. That was like the favorite upset. Dallas after game 5 just was like, or after game 4 was like, okay, we're done with this, and just won out, which was great. Edmonton and LA was awesome, but again, Edmonton was also done with that, and I thought whoever won that series could go all the way. We nailed both of those series. Did anybody have LA?
No, I think so. So we all went chalk on the West Side. The only one that we all lost was Seattle, and we all won Dallas, Vegas, Edmonton.
Okay, so we all nailed it. Obviously, the Kraken surprised us all, rightfully so. So going to the East, I did not pick Florida to beat Boston. I had Boston in 5. However, I did pick Toronto to beat Boston. So that is looking pretty good for Toronto to advance. I could be wrong. Florida could take all the momentum and just freak out. But let's not forget, Toronto getting past the first round has its own momentum as well. So that's going to be a very interesting series. That's probably the series I'm looking forward to the most. I just feel like there's so much intrigue there.
Yeah, let's kind of stay on. Let's stay over in this part of the bracket right here, because there's a shit ton, not just a lot, a shit ton to talk about between the Boston-Florida series, Jack, and the Toronto-Tampa Bay series. I think these are probably 2 of the most entertaining series of the first round. And Jack and Trav, I think you guys both picked Toronto. Trav, why don't you kick off with this one real quick? Leafs dispatched of Tampa Bay in 6 first round.
Yes, sir. I have the Toronto Maple Leafs winning the cup in my bracket. I think this is their year. I've said this kind of like the past 2 years, that all they have to do is get out of the first round and they're going to go on a run. And I think this upcoming round against Florida, you're going to see them play a lot looser. And I think that's going to really benefit them. As for the previous series with Tampa, Vasilevsky, he let in some bad goals. And I don't know if he's injured, tired. We may never find out, but it was ugly. And their old assistant coach comes on Sportsnet and says, oh, well, we ran some analytics, and he's one of the worst goalies in the league at point shots. And then Morgan Riley's just firing point shots past them all series long. And the blocker side was an issue too. And the Bruins are grown men. They can piss the bed if they want.
That's from Andrew Bonvecchio. Yeah, I guess that's true, right? Like they can do if they
I don't necessarily understand what that means, but I love it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, let's just keep going.
Yeah, so Vasilevsky struggled. There were some games, and it felt like it was the first period of every game, and it was kind of like that in Colorado as well, where the Maple Leafs were just coming out flat every single game, and Tampa was taking it to them in the first period. Every single game, it felt like. And their forecheck was sloppy, and they weren't breaking pucks out like they've been able to do in the past. And then as the game just kind of gradually went on, they'd slowly find their game. And I think Tampa, we'll see what everyone does in the offseason, get in my head of myself, but I think they have another year or two in them, but they're getting old quick, and they don't have a lot of young talent coming up. Stamkos has a year left on his deal. I wonder how much that core has left in the tank.
It's interesting because there was a few times during that series where you go, here goes Toronto, gonna Toronto, like the Mets with the Mets. Like they lose game one, like 7-3. It's like, are you serious? But then they came right back, and then they go up 3-1, and they immediately drop a game at home. You're like, you gotta be kidding me. They're gonna F and blow it. But no, to their credit, and Tavares, who they signed in 2018, for Christ's sake, he's the one who puts it away. Whatever. Do whatever you got to do, get past the first round. I love that they got past the first round. I think they will carry that momentum. I had them knocking off Boston, for God's sake. I don't have no one in the cup. I feel like they might run out of gas a little bit. But teams, great teams, even Washington, they do this. Like, they get far, they get over a hump, and it's not like the sky's the limit. It's like a progress step. And I had Carolina knocking them off, which would probably be a pretty damn good series, to be honest. It'd probably go either way. I definitely didn't have them losing in 5. I had them losing in 6 or 7. And I do think the sky's the limit for them now that they've finally gotten past that step. And if Tampa is truly taking a step back, like you're saying, it's only going to mean Toronto is going to consistently be there more and have deeper playoff runs, and they'll probably snag at least a cup appearance. They're way too talented, especially on offense. So I love it. I just love good hockey. I'm a huge Matthews fan, obviously for fantasy purposes and among others. And no, it's good. They don't bother me like they do other people. They just don't. So I'm happy to see them finally knock off
Too skilled for Jim's liking.
Well, in Tampa's irked me because you got the Kucherov, the hurt all year shit, come back at the start of the playoffs, and they already can sign people for cheaper. And it's like, your team is incredibly talented, but you belong in the 90s with the between how you're manipulating. And I don't blame them, but it is what it is. The way they manipulated the cap, they clearly have an advantage. They've drafted well. Don't get me wrong. CBY set them up amazingly before he left for Detroit. They deserve everything they got, but I'm not going to lie. I'm happy that another team has finally knocked them out. We don't have to worry about them being in the second and third round of the playoffs. I mean, they were in a cup. What was it, last year? Yeah, shit. Like, God, let's see some other teams now, some teams that really deserve it, who've really paid their dues, and that's Toronto. So I'll take it all day.
All right, so Toronto, Florida, shaping up to be, I think this could be a series for the century. I'm being serious. Like, Matthew, Florida won. They beat Boston because of Matthew Tkachuk. They have the same team as they did last year, and let's say that Paul Maurice is the coach. I think they lose that series. Without Matthew Tkachuk, Florida, they lose 4-1 that series. That guy, he's so valuable to a club, not just for his skill, because obviously he's a 100-point player. It's like, no shit, 40-goal guy. His personality, his attitude, his leadership. Dude, you can't say enough about guys like Matt Tkachuk. I think he needs to be in the conversation for a top 5 player in the league, and I'm dead serious. But he not single-handedly, because I don't want to say that, because obviously it's a team sport. Matt Verhaeghe's a very good player. They got Ekblad down there, good, decent goaltending. Matt Tkachuk, without Matt Tkachuk, that team's done 4-1, maybe even 4-0.
I wish you didn't kind of go back on your last point, because I agree with you. They won that series because of Matthew Tkachuk.
Yeah.
I don't think they looked great. I actually think Toronto might pump them pretty easy here, but I mean, back-to-back 100-point years for Tkachuk. Plays old school style hockey. I talk about this a lot. Like, for the Flyers fan here, I want guys like Matthew Tkachuk and Tom Wilson and Rick Tocchet and prime Wayne Simmons. Like, I don't really want the Deloriers and the McEwens. I want the skill guys who play that old school Rick Tocchet style, that Mike Richards style. That's Matthew Tkachuk to a T, and he might be the best in the league at it. Also, like, very marketable guy. I mean, the guy just tells it like it is. He's funny. He's a bit of a goofball, and I love that.
I also love being able to stick it to our own organization a bit because Barry Zito took a lot of flack making that trade. He traded Uyghur, he traded Huberdeau, he traded first-round picks. He also traded a lot going for it last year, and we interviewed him, but they really had no interest. They had their heart set on Chuck Fletcher, and that shows you a lot about how stupid this front office is.
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day, Jack. I forget if it came up on Twitter or not, but I remember last summer I was thinking to myself, wow, Trey Living, the GM for Calgary at the time, who was recently, they mutually parted ways, whatever. I was saying, wow, maybe GM of the year already for getting what he got for Matt Tkachuk. And then turns out Calgary misses the playoffs. Uyghur has a shit season. Huberdeau, not a great year. The coach is fired up there. In the meantime, Matt Tkachuk is eliminating the best team in NHL regular season history in the first round. It was an amazing deal for Zito. You're right.
And not only that, like a lot of the questions came out. Well, first off, on the Flyers, like they interviewed him, and this is his words. It was like he brought up a binder. He really took everything serious. He had the analytics. He was an assistant to my boy in Columbus and Kekalainen. It's like, yo, this guy, if Kekalainen could do a lot with nothing, his understudy, we should seriously consider. And they're like, yeah, we're just almost doing it because we have to. We're going to go with Chuck Fletcher. And it's like, I remember like at the time not caring as much, but still kind of being like, that's kind of weird. Like maybe take the best candidate, like, you know what I mean? Like, and it's like, and then you see where our franchise is going and where their franchise is going. It's like, yeah, we have some morons running this organization for sure. And it irks me to my core.
Hey, but when you can hire Cliff Fletcher's son, you got to do it.
Cliff. Oh my God. It's so true though. And it just shows, man, the guy's not only does he have balls because he pulled that deal, didn't give a rat's ass what anybody said, but now it's paying dividends. And he's going to probably draft well, and he's going to make good trades. He's going to make that team only better.
See, that's like, okay. Would you be okay packaging a Provorov and a Konechny for a Tkachuk? And if that question was ever asked, I mean, I think, if you're looking at just regular numbers, obviously Huberdeau has better numbers than Travis Konechny, but I'll say it. I think TK is the better player than Jonathan Huberdeau, and maybe arguably Ivan Provorov over Mackenzie Weegar. I mean, let me ask you guys, because maybe I sound a little crazy right now. If the Flyers offer, if Florida offered, who did Florida trade? I'm sorry, I'm confused.
Florida traded Weegar and Huberdeau.
And I think it was a pick too. I think it was like picks involved as well.
Okay, so let's say Calgary was like, "Hey, we'll trade you Matt Tkachuk if you give us a first Konechny Provorov." Do you do it? It's easy to say yeah now, right?
Now I would. Before it's like it's tough to. It's kind of it depends on where our first is. Our first was a lot higher than Calgary, so that's part of it. But to give up Konechny and Provorov, to look at it that way, that's a tough sell. That's a real tough sell. I think Provorov is worlds better than Weegar. Uyghur's very one-dimensional. He's very offensive. He's an offensive defenseman. TK is very good, obviously. It's not. I don't think the value is the same, but he also was looking at having to sign these guys long-term. It's not like they were locked up. So it was kind of like, I'll roll the dice with Tkachuk, who wants out and could literally be my franchise. It's my franchise, and I can get out of having to find a way to sign these guys to long-term deals where it's Florida. I mean, he maybe doesn't have the money, where it's a different situation in Philly. We can sign our guys. And I do think Provorov is significantly better than Weegar.
Yeah, this is my bad. So Cliff comments, stream on. No way Florida trades Tkachuk, especially for those two Tkachuks, top 10, 15. Yeah, I know.
Florida wouldn't do it. We were talking about Calgary.
Yeah, we're talking about Calgary. That was me jumbling up my words there, so my bad, Cliff. Yeah, now there's no shot. And the other Tkachuk's not going anywhere, captain in Ottawa. So real quick, because we have – he just popped in, actually, boys. So it's 8:30, right on time. Our buddy Dan Silver.
What's going on?
Dan, he's back.
I'm ready for the Flyers playoff game tonight. I hope we can get our show done.
I got
by
mine
the
on
time it
too.
starts. Yeah,
Yes.
Travis has got it on.
Who are we playing?
I think we're playing the Penguins, maybe, or the Caps. I think.
Yeah. Yeah, we
Penguins.
wish.
5 overtime game. Let's go.
Playoffs,
Let's do
those
it.
were the days, eh?
Yeah, I mean that game was only 24 years ago. No, 22 years ago, maybe.
I was
mean, it was just
definitely
like
11 or
yesterday.
12. That's for sure.
Just like yesterday. Were you guys even born for that game?
I was
Yeah.
in elementary school.
Don't remember it though. Yeah.
I was
Those are the
somewhere.
days.
Anyway, died.
Make sure my
yeah,
mom didn't come
nutsack
home
or
and send me to
something.
bed. It's great.
All right, so Dan, we were just talking some Stanley Cup playoffs here. We're gonna maybe switch gears a little bit, and if you guys were watching the U18 tournament, United States won in overtime yesterday, 3-2, with Ryan Leonard scoring the game-winning goal. Dan, obviously, we've been kind of going back and forth talking prospects on Twitter for the last couple weeks, and you followed the tournament pretty closely. Player that stuck out to you the most from Team USA in a positive or negative way?
So, and hopefully we'll get into some of the non-USA guys too a little bit.
Oh yeah,
Because I think I think the guy who stood out for me the most wasn't even on the USA team.
Sure.
But and just talking about guys that are going to be draft eligible this year, the good news for Flyers fans is that there are a ton of guys that are going to be available. If we don't win the lottery, we're 12% to move up to first or second. If we don't win the lottery and we're going to be at 7 or 8, maybe 9, but probably 7 or 8. There's just a ton of guys that really showed off at the under 18s. And I think that kind of made me feel a lot more comfortable with, if we end up with those guys. So it's interesting because the top line for the USA team is probably the most productive line in the history of that program. And it's Will Smith at center, Ryan Leonard on the right wing, I believe, and Gabe Perreault on the left wing. Those guys combined for 55 points in 7 games, just outrageous, to the point where you're watching these games and it's the first game they beat up on Switzerland or someone, and it's I can't wait till they take on a good team, and then they take on a decent team and they do the same thing, right? Put up 5 or 6 goals. The finals were a little bit different. They ended up winning the game, but the Swedish team, I think, was able to keep them in check a little bit. But anyway, getting to your question, and I know, Jim, you're a big fan of Ryan Leonard. He's the guy who I think he's the most surefire of the 4 prospects on the U.S. team: Will Smith, Oliver Moore, Gabriel Perreault, Ryan Leonard. I think Leonard is the guy who's the most surefire to become a first-line NHL player. And a lot of it's because he's on the wing, although if the Flyers draft him, I could see them trying to turn him into a center. But the way that he plays is he's just a hard-nosed power forward who can score. He just doesn't have many deficiencies in his game. So Leonard's a guy who he's probably going to go top 10 or top 12, where the guy never has a bad shift. He doesn't, I don't think he has the upside actually of the 3 other guys potentially, but his floor is just so high and he does have decent upside that Leonard's a guy that I would not be upset. Look, I wouldn't be upset if they ended up with any of them. Will Smith is generally thought of as the guy who's going to go before any of those other guys. They're, looking at him going maybe 4th or 5th. He was named MVP of the tournament. And Jim, we've talked about this a little bit on Twitter back and forth. I have some concerns about Will Smith because he's a very creative center. He creates space for himself, but he reminds me a lot of Kevin Hayes, and his compete level away from the puck. And keep in mind, these are 18-year-olds, right? So we're trying to predict how these kids are going to develop. It's really difficult. You know what I mean? Will Smith could come into the NHL and, figure it all out, right? I've got to compete more. I got to improve my skating. So take all this with a grain of salt. But I have some concerns about Will Smith's lack of compete level away from the puck, and also his lack of skating ability. That line is so good, and all 3 of those guys. Gabriel Perreault reminds me of Patrice Bergeron. Like
Wow.
he's just he's not the best skater in the world, but his soft skills are really good. He's always in the right spot. Like he's going to go top 15 also. And then, I mean, my favorite guy for a while of those has been Oliver Moore, because I think that the Flyers lack game-breaking speed. And you watch Oliver Moore, he doesn't put up the numbers those guys do because he's on the second line. He's not, those three guys have each other, right? Moore doesn't really have any trigger men on the second line. You watch him play, man, his speed creates something almost every shift. He's just so fast, but his compete level is massive. Like he goes into the corners, he fishes the puck out. He's a fun player to watch, and his skill set, I think, is what the Flyers are kind of missing the most right now. They just don't have that guy with the game-breaking speed. But the thing about Oliver Moore is you don't know what his ceiling is in terms of skill level. He can pull off some pretty skilled plays, but I don't think his skill level is like where Will Smith or Perreault is at. So like all four of those guys have pluses and minuses. I think Will Smith's going to go before the Flyers pick. And I think Ryan Leonard would be the safest guy. I think Perreault is the least likely guy that they would take. I've heard that they like Oliver Moore a lot and they like Smith a lot. I'm sure they like Leonard a lot. But, you know, like I said, all four of those guys are really impressive. And just watching that tournament made me realize we're going to get a really good player at 7. And they might look at D-men also, but there's a couple other players, Jim, we can talk about in the tournament. I'm sure you want to chime in, and Jack and Travis also.
Yeah. So, I mean, we have you for the next 20 minutes. Let's kind of just cover the USA real quick, and then we can move forward a little. So a guy like Leonard, I know that I've kind of been over the top with him a little bit, just because he's my guy. You know, everyone has their guy. And I think if I'm drafting 7, 8, 9, it might sound a little boring, but it's not. I like a guy with a high floor, right? Because for me, that's like he's got the most potential to be what I think he's going to be. There's not going to be many surprises if I take this guy. He's going to pan out. His ceiling might not be as high as a guy like Oliver Moore or Will Smith, but I know at least what I'm getting, and I'm getting a really good player. You know what I mean? Whereas a guy like Moore has, you said it, the speed. The Flyers have the guys that can put the puck in the net, we think. Maybe, I've been saying this for years, the guy that they've been missing is a guy that can play the center position and kind of stir it all together. They don't have a guy that can kind of, you know, distribute the puck, and now they have snipers that can put the puck in the net. Oliver Moore might be a great pick at 7, 8, 9. So I honestly, after watching the tournament, Dan, like I think a lot of us are holding out hope, like, please let the Flyers get 1 or 2. And we still want that. So please don't take us the wrong way here. We still want Connor Bedard. But, you know, guys at 7, 8, 9 at the back of the top 10, Flyers are going to get a very good player. And I think there's something to be excited about there, no matter who they get, honestly. And it goes beyond the top 10. We're going to get to some more guys. But Jack, Trav, anything you want to contribute here?
Well, one thing that you said, Jim, was like you wanted to go with the safe pick. You like the guy who has a higher ceiling. When it comes to the top 10, I actually aim for the I'm sorry, you said higher floor. Higher ceiling is what I want. And when I see a guy like Moore, you really can't teach that kind of speed. And that kind of stuff just excites the hell out of me. And we don't have that game-breaking style of just the attribute. And that is just from what we have already and what we could potentially add. I don't see that very often. And I'm all for that. All for that. It excites me. It's great that we're going to probably if we stay at 7 or 8, we're going to wind up with one or the other. But you know me, I want the best player available, and that means the highest ceiling possible. And a guy like Moore, when you think of the players in this league who have dominated because of their skill, their main attribute being speed, those are, and I understand there's some busts there, but man, if you hit on a guy like that is next level. And I'm all about that. If you have to draft a 7 or 8, I really, really would like to see what that guy had. I'm going to do some more research, obviously, but like I really enjoy that style of where his best ability is just speed. It creates mismatches. It gives you so many more options with your other talented, passers, playmakers. It just creates a different dynamic that we haven't seen. I can't tell you how long. For me, that would be a great add to this prospect pool.
We had Russ Cohen on last week, Dan, and he said there are some people saying that Moore is the fastest player in the draft. Russ said he's not ready to say that yet. He's going to kind of, wait till the last couple days to decide. He wants to see everybody first. But I think, Jack, were you saying last week that, or was it Dan? Somebody was saying that he's even faster than Connor McDavid at the same age, Oliver Moore.
I don't have the balls to say that, but I did.
I swear I had heard that.
I definitely didn't say something like that, but it's possible. Actually,
I think I read it. Yeah.
I think the fastest skater in the draft, there's a Russian defenseman, undersized Russian defenseman named Mikhail Golgayev or something. You watch some tapes of this kid, like going end to end in the NHL, which is admittedly like not a great league, but if he wasn't Russian, someone would. He pulls off some shit like Cale Makar. There's a lot of really exciting players in this draft.
Yeah, there is. And hey, I got to eat a little bit of crow because a couple months ago, I'm like, yeah, so what? The Flyers don't have a second round pick. They got 2 third-round picks, yada, yada. Now I'm looking at this first round and I'm like, okay, if they do trade Provorov, I would be fine with a late first round pick. I really would. If they were to trade with let's say they trade with the Kings or something, that's a back end. You're drafting bottom 16 there. I'm perfectly fine with that. Give me a bottom 10 pick. You're getting a good player there.
Yeah, I mean, and if they could somehow get another pick in you look at like the top 17, 18, 19, 20. Yeah. It's really solid. A lot of these kids are really playing well. Maybe we talk about some of the other teams and players, but there have been a number that have just really good in the U18s.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people right
real quick to give Fletcher credit for Owen Tippett and all that, where I think we all know he kind of accepted what was given to him. But man, if that was a 2023 first, not a 2024, we'd be sitting pretty. We'd be sitting awfully pretty with this draft. A lot of people were quick to make comments. I think they're going to be overrated and whatnot. And I'm like, yeah, well, wait till this to fruition. There's a lot to like here.
We would have been upset that the Panthers won last night if we had that pick, because that costs you 8 spots. You know what I mean?
I know. We'd have been golden, and now we're like, are you kidding me? There's a whole different dynamic to the start of this podcast. That's for sure.
Oh, here you go. Gulayev is my dream trade back up pick. Talk about someone with a very high ceiling. That's from Carts 88. So somebody knows who you're talking about there, Dan.
You guys go watch some highlights. Carts 88 knows where it's at. I mean, he's pulling off some stuff in the NHL that looks like Cale Makar. That league is not great. It's probably lower tier than the Canadian juniors, but he is super fast and has got a lot of skill. So the Russian factor is going to scare some people off. I mean, there's a big Russian winger / center named Daniil But I don't know. It's spelled B-U-T, but watch some highlights of that guy. Holy crap. He's this tall Russian kid who just pulls off some of the most insane stuff. It'd be interesting to know where some of these guys would go if they weren't Russian. Those two, Golyayev, Butt, and Michkov, obviously. I don't know. I from what I'm hearing, I think he's going to drop. I think the caps, I don't think he'll drop past the caps because they just think that they can get all the Russian guys over here because of Ovechkin. But I would not be shocked if he falls that. I don't think the Flyers would take him. I don't think so. But
are we talking about Michkov here?
Yeah.
So I was just, since we're talking about Russians, let's talk about the war a little bit. No, I'm just kidding. I wanted to ask that though. I mean, all right, Michkov, I'm hearing all week last week, teams are going to pass on him. And I'm not just talking about, sliding down the 5-6. I'm talking about he could slide down to where the Blues are picking. He could slide down to where the Caps are picking. Second best player in the draft. Are teams really that afraid of him not being able to come over? Like, come on.
First, I don't know if I would say that he's definitely the second best player in the draft. I think that Adam Fantilli is pretty legit. And there's a lot less question marks about Fantilli's defensive game than Michkov. if you wanted comparisons, like Michkov, I've heard a lot of people kind of compare him to like a Nikita Kucherov, which I think is probably a pretty good comparison. And Fantilli is kind of like an Eichel type player. So, Carlson is really good from Sweden. His style is a lot like Matt Sundin. Like I think he might all be as good as Fantilli. So those three guys, Bedard, Fantilli, and Carlson, are just way too talented for someone to take Michkov before them with all the uncertainty. And I mean, I just think people don't know. Maybe they know more than, I'm sure they know more than us, right? But
no.
Michkov kind of had a tale of two seasons. Like he struggled a little bit the first half of the season, and then he kicked it in a little bit when he was with Sochi. So, but the question is like, yeah, I don't know. I think he might slip, but I just don't think that I think the Caps would take him is what I think. So maybe I'm wrong about that, but it just doesn't feel like the Caps would pass on a guy like him.
No,
I mean, if he lands the Caps, it's still slipping, I think, majorly. I mean, where are they drafting at this point?
No, the Caps are right behind the Flyers.
Yep. So that's what, 8th? If we say everything is, that's still a pretty big slip. For what we had heard, he was definitely in that tier.
If he was available for the Flyers to take and they passed on him, I'd be pissed.
And they went to the Caps on top of that. That's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, and who knows, right? Who knows what they would do? But just with some of the things I've heard, I'm not sure that Briere wants that risk with his first pick because they are enamored with some of these players, from what I understand. They had the whole Flyers front office, including Briere, was over there watching the U18s, and I heard they were very impressed with a number of guys. The guy, if I can, Jim, that I sort of, and I liked him going into this tournament, but there are some questions sort of about how his offensive upside will translate to the NHL. But like watching the Slovakian team, Dalibor Dvorsky, that dude is a freaking assassin. Like there's a goal he scored where he basically circled back to the point, to the blue line, and you could see his eyes. It looked like something from the Predator. Like he's just scanning everything, and he just rips a wrist shot, top shelf, upper 90 corner from just inside the blue line. And he was completely dominant in that entire tournament, not playing with a lot of good guys on his line. I've heard that the Canadians have kind of gotten really enamored with him and he might not make it past them. But I think I sort of like Dvorsky at this point better than any of those American players. I mean, you talk about a guy having it. I watch those games and I'm like, this dude has it. He's really impressive. So I thought Dvorsky was impressive. And then the defenseman for Sweden, Axel Sandin Pellikka.
That's the guy I like.
He's a right-handed defenseman, and he was really good in the tournament. He just he reminds me a little bit of Miro Heiskanen. He does everything well. And then the kid who wasn't in the tournament, but is a defenseman that most people have as the top defenseman in the last draft, Reinbacher from Switzerland, I believe. He's really good. You watch highlights of him. He's another right-handed defenseman. So, I heard the Flyers were really impressed with the Swedish kid, Pellikka, Dvorsky. They like Moore. They like Smith. I'm sure they like Leonard. But there are a number of really exciting players. The kid on Canada, was it Matthew Wood?
Yeah.
He was really impressive all tournament, along with Colby Barlow, who looks like he's 40 years old. But there's just a lot of exciting players who are going to be available.
Yeah, and it's now that we're here, it's maybe the Flyers should have found a way to get another top 15 or 20 pick.
How many times have I said that all year?
Yeah, you and Jack were getting on me about that all year, and I'm like, nah, you don't need picks. But now that we're here, guys, I think I'm
to your credit, Jim. We took a lot of flack, shockingly, which blows my mind, but it is what it is.
I think I might be on this side of.
I mean, Montreal's got 5-17. Detroit has 9-18. Chicago has 3-20.
Columbus has back end first round picks, I think.
Yeah, actually, the Florida pick conveys to Montreal, so that's going to be lower actually. But who has the?
Still can't believe the guy.
Toronto has the Boston pick, and that pick is going to be higher than they thought. That's kind of
ridiculous.
How about Columbus? Does Columbus have back end first round?
Columbus has the LA pick. So that's going to be pretty high.
Watch for that one
Mhm.
because they want some players, and Flyers are selling some guys. Like maybe.
Yeah, but Hayes. I mean, I don't know if you're thinking about Hayes, but I don't think Hayes.
Rovi.
No.
Yeah, Provorov. I'm thinking send
Would he-
send over Provorov. I think there's going to be a massive deal with Columbus, and I didn't even mention Provorov in the article that I wrote. I don't think. I don't have any inside information. That's a theory I have. I'm almost 100% positive Hayes is going there, but I'm like, the Flyers have things Columbus wants, and Columbus has things the Flyers want. Let's make a massive
Who else can we
blockbusting
trade
deal.
them?
I just
Provorov.
going to Columbus to make it worth our while.
You think they want Provorov?
Yeah, I think they would take
Yeah,
him.
take him.
Yeah, I think Kekalainen's a really good GM. They don't have a coach yet, so I can't say what the coach is looking for or whatever. But they have a guy like Werenski who I think is somewhat similar to Provorov. I don't think we've been getting Provorov's best here for a long time.
How do we give him Sanheim?
Yeah,
I'll
right.
be all about that.
Speaking
feel
of
like-
trades, real quick, guys.
I don't
do
think
have
we're
a-
getting much back. There's just too much money being exchanged and coming off our books to make it worthwhile.
for Sanheim. You mean?
Anybody we give up, Hayes and whoever, like there's a lot of money coming off our books. I don't see a whole lot coming back.
So, for what I heard for Hayes is the Flyers are retaining. I think at least
Oh,
they're telling teams that they're going to retain 2.1. They think that Kevin Hayes is worth something at $5 million, so they're looking to get something back for Kevin Hayes at $5 million. And then
I think that's very fair.
yeah, and the rest is my theory that they're going to let's do something. Let's really do something here. So, anyways, real quick, this is addressed to you, Dan. Sorry, this is from Cliff. Do you think, as Jim mentioned, that Provorov could fetch a first rounder in 2023, or would they need to add a pick from the third round? I guess that's the Flyers.
That's a cute dog, by the way, Cliff. But yeah, no, I think that Provorov would be able to fetch like a late first round pick, maybe even mid to late. I don't know. I've heard around the league that maybe some people think that's a little high for him, but I don't know. I think Provorov should be able to fetch a first round pick, and if you trade him and Hayes to Columbus, then I think you're talking about a mid first round pick. I think teams like the Canadians could be interested in Provorov. He always shows up and plays well against Montreal. They've been sort of a spot that I've thought might make an interesting destination. I think Carter Hart. They've got to clear people's names from the sexual assault case, I think, before any of those guys could get moved. And I don't think they'll end up trading Hart. But Hart's a guy who I could see going to Montreal too.
wow.
But yeah, I think the Provorov. I think he would fetch a first round pick. The Kings, I guess they already traded their first round pick. So, but the Kings that's a team that I think would love. They need left-handed defensemen. The Kings have a lot of right-handed defensemen, but they need some left-handed defensemen. So maybe you could trade Sanheim to the Kings for like a third round pick or something.
Oh, that'd be great.
From what I know, the Kings are real. They still really like Provorov, but I think they really like. They're trying to re-sign Gavrikov. I think I saw something today that Doughty was like. Somebody asked him a question like how they're going to sign Gavrikov, and he was like, "Oh, start giving him money from my cap, from my salary." So they really liked him, I guess.
Do they don't have a cap issue there, do they?
Final cap
think
space
so.
for this season was 1.3, so I don't know if that's an issue.
I mean, they're paying Doughty $11 million. He should be giving other people part of his salary.
Yeah, he's making
Like Drew Doughty's making $11 million for the next 4 seasons.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
That's just retarded.
They got to re-sign
feel like-
Velarde.
when teams look at the Flyers and they look at players like Provorov, you're not coming in hot. Like I feel like you're trying to get a bit of a discount because of how things have played out. Unless you're in some kind of bidding war with another team, I just don't think we're getting them for what we think we're getting them for.
I didn't realize that Detroit had 2 first-round picks. That's kind of interesting.
When are those picks?
That's Stevie Y, baby.
Yeah, they got the Islanders pick. So they have their own pick, which is 9. And then they got the Islanders pick, which is going to be 18, I believe.
Tasty little pick from New York.
What was that trade? Does anyone
I'm trying
remember?
to think of it. Yeah.
Let's see. What was that trade?
I don't remember it.
When did I feel like Islanders pick might have come in somebody else or something. Like, how the hell did they?
Oh, in the meantime, we got a hang on here. We got some. So the Flyers need a stopgap defenseman for Matechuk for the second pair. Provorov kind of fits that need. Am I missing something here? Who's Matechuk? Does anybody know who that is?
That was the Philip Hronik trade, by the way.
Wow.
Oh, he went to where did he go?
Yeah, it was it was like a Bo Horvat was traded, and then so the Canucks got that pick originally for Bo Horvat, and then the Canucks traded that pick to Detroit for Philip Hronik.
Are you kidding me? I mean, Hronik's a good little player, but with what Vancouver's going through, are you kidding me? They're trading 2023 ones. That's a little odd.
Is Cart suggesting that the Flyers that Columbus would trade us Matechuk?
Oh, no, I think he's saying that Columbus needs to use Provorov as the stopgap D for when Matechuk comes up, I'm assuming.
Oh, okay.
So
I don't think they would trade that. I
interest,
don't think they would trade that kid, but
No, they're going to keep Matechuk, but Provorov would be the guy that would fill in on the second line till he's ready to play.
Elliot was saying today he thinks that the Kings are going to trade some of their kids this offseason and start to really make a push for this thing.
Quentin, come on down, baby.
Where, that's
I want Clark.
Yeah, they're not going to trade
Clark, baby.
All right.
But I think they'll try and trade like Turcotte. I don't know if they'd trade Byfield.
I would take Turcotte, even with all the past couple of years have been a little rough for him. I was saying last year, obviously everything's worked out because Owen Tippett's been great. But when they were shopping Claude Giroux around, I was like, trade for Velarde. And he's having a nice little year this year.
Yeah,
I would take the risk on Turcotte. He was highly touted when he was drafted, was he not?
Yeah, I think I'd rather go draft picks than a guy like Turcotte. But yeah, Turcotte was the top 5 pick, right? But I think I'd rather probably go draft picks. But
I would go draft pick, especially if it's 2023.
Yeah, you get to pick your own guy. Yeah, I would agree. Did anybody check to see if LA had picks?
No, they don't have a first round pick.
All right. Well,
Up there.
that cancels a lot out unless they're trading 2024s. Yeah, interesting stuff. Did we touch on everyone we wanted to touch on from the U18s? Another guy I wanted to talk about was Otto Stenberg. I think he was captain for Sweden. He's a center, the guy that's going to go towards probably the back of the draft. Flyers get a pick. He's a guy I would keep an eye on.
He was
the Stanley Cup, baby.
Stenberg was 4th in the U18s in scoring. He doesn't have a lot of like dynamic qualities to his game.
No.
And he's projected to go sort of like end of the first round, which is obviously the Flyers don't have anything there at the moment. But if the Flyers were able to get into that spot, I think he would be a logical type of player that they could take. I'd love to see them. I don't know if they'll do it, but I'd love to see them take the Russian defenseman Goyaev. That would be kind of exciting if they got into the end of the first round.
Oh, he's going to go first?
They want to take the risk and take some of these Russian kids.
So let's kind of go down here because I want to get like a consensus kind of thing going here. Dan, you're the guest. If you're the Flyers at 7 and Michkov is there, are you taking him?
No.
Okay. Jack, if Michkov's there, are you taking him at 7?
I mean, you asked me 2 weeks ago, it's 100% yes. I'm still going to lean yes, but the percentage it's slipping. Hearing a
Travis,
lot.
if Michkov's there, you are?
Yes.
I would feel it'd be pretty tough for me not to take him. So what are we at, 2-2? Or Jack, you said yes, right?
I would. It'd be tough, but I would.
It would be hard for me to say no, I think.
I guess it sort of for me depends on who else is there, but
true too. But it just feels like you could really right a wrong with this organization by getting a situation like that where a guy falls to you. Yeah, it could totally. But at the same time, it can totally save you at the same time. So it's tough.
We need to hope that they have and know that they have better information than we do, right? It's kind of hard. It's kind of hard for the 4 of us to answer 100%. That question, right? Like,
yeah,
because you just don't know if he's coming over. I mean,
maybe Provorov can do us one
favor
before
talent alone. We all say yes. It's
Correct.
Not about that. It's about the situation.
Yeah, it's not clearly not about the talent. And look, it's weird for me to say no, I guess, because I've advocated the Flyers need to take big risks. right? And that would be a big risk. I just wish you knew what was going to happen with him, because you can't miss on this pick. Like, this is a huge pick. This is a really good draft, and you could potentially get, even at 7, you could potentially get a franchise center. Like, there's a chance that like Dalibor Dvorsky turns into a franchise center. There's a chance that Oliver Moore turns into Dylan Larkin, right? So it's like, are you going to risk a guy never coming over and not take a guy that could become a Ryan O'Reilly or a Dylan Larkin, right? It's tough.
I'm getting juiced up over here.
And
And I was never a big draft
Nolan
guy.
Patrick, a guy who's even he played, a guy who just
I was watching Nico Hischier tonight, and it just every time I watch him, I think about, not that we could have had him, obviously, because he went first, but it's still a little bit upsetting. So
yeah, we always get screwed. It is what it is.
Yeah,
might be why I have a tough time watching the Stars. When you watch Heiskanen, Ottinger, and
I love those guys though.
Yeah, they're good.
I can't wait until they get Logan Stankoven in the lineup next season. Like, that team's going to be good for a long time.
They are going to be good.
Sometimes I think of these other teams and how good they are and what they still have coming, and think of where we're at. And some people are so high on what we could do, and I'm like, we have a long way to
Devils? Go. How good are the Devils? And they have Luke Hughes coming and Simone Nemeth next season. The Devils literally have like the 2 best defense prospects not in the NHL right now. Mm-hmm. Both probably going to be on the team next year.
And they were like, what, 2 points away from winning the division?
Yeah, it's retarded.
I noticed that you left off your boy there. Check.
Oh, yeah. No, I know. He's up there with those guys. I'm just saying.
Meyer without giving up Holtz or Mercer. Like, Jesus.
Yeah, that was fun. That used to be the Flyers. Remember those days?
But no, we're real close. Like, it just blows my mind. It's like this is not a marathon. This is not a race. It's a fucking marathon. Like, come on. We have to draft well. We have to do this right. Let's not be stupid.
All right, Dan. So we're like about a half an hour and 2 minutes in with you now. I want to get your take real quick. Actually, 2 questions. I'll put you on the spot here, and I'll ask you this first. If I asked you for your top 10 prospect ranking, would you have that for me right now, or do you need more time?
I mean, it could change, right? But I mean, right now, just thinking about it off the top of my head, I would say, and we're just going talent-wise, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, Bedard, Fantilli, Carlson, Michkov. Frick, at this point, I might put Dvorsky at 5th. Like, I really liked his U18. The dude's like the Predator, man. I like him.
You did like him.
I would. Then it starts getting. I still think that Benson. I still think that Benson is 6th, right? I think that Benson is 5th or 6th. He wasn't in the U18s, but like, he's really good. Watch highlights of that WHL team who's on the Winnipeg team. Like, Benson is really good. So him, if he slips, man, I'm all over him. I don't think he could slip actually to 7, and I hope they would take him. But I would say then Benson at 6. I would probably go. Then it gets tough, right? Like, maybe Leonard. It's the next tier. The next group there is a combination of Moore, Leonard, Pelika, and probably Reinbacher for me.
Okay.
So that's kind of like what I would be looking at. And then I have Smith kind of like just after those. I just don't like him as much as a lot of other people. So I'd probably have Smith just outside of the top 10. But so that would probably be my top 10. Bedard, Fantilli, Carlson, Michkov, Dvorsky, Benson, Moore, Leonard, Pelika, and Reinbacher.
See, I appreciate what you did there, because I was just kind of fooling around with rankings earlier today, and I actually bumped Smith up a couple spots just because of the numbers that he put up in the tournament. And numbers can be a little deceiving, right? Like, sure, he put up a lot of points, but look at the line mates he played with.
I'm just trying to project to the next level. Yeah, and it's possible
That's why I appreciate the way you ranked them. I think that was an honest ranking.
What Dan made me realize, which is kind of crazy, and feel how you will about these players as you will, but the Flyers, if they do stay at 7, which is where they're currently projected, you could theoretically have a Dvorsky, a Benson, or a Smith available. And I feel like it's feel how you will as Smith, but I'm going with like the majority currently that is a different tier from those other guys that you're like at the end of that tier. Like, I wonder if they just stay and you could have Columbus jump on Smith based on what we heard. And then you're looking at a Benson or a Dvorsky, and we're not even talking about Leonard. And correct me if I'm wrong, Leonard or Moore, one of those players, because Benson and them are in it. Just Dvorsky, from what I've heard from you, is a tier above. And that's kind of interesting to me. I did not see them in that situation.
If you're the Flyers and you have this, table sort of set with, you get to pick your guy from this litter, right? And you got Benson sitting there, you got Dvorsky, Smith, Leonard. Why not trade back a little bit? You're getting a guy.
Well, hold on. If they're in that one tier and they can get the last player in that tier, I don't trade back. However, if they're at the top of the next tier, depending on how far they go back, now we're talking. There's a difference for me there.
If Detroit has number 9 and let's say a mid to back end first round pick, and they go, we'll give you the 9, and I don't know what it is, pick 18 or 19 for pick 7. Are you doing it?
It depends on who's on the board.
Easily.
Who's on the board? I want to know who's on the board.
I'm doing it.
Yeah,
who's on the board?
Depends on who's on the board.
Yeah, who's on the board? Benson's on the board. I don't think I do that.
I don't be interesting as Mishkov starts slipping if teams start calling, trying to trade up to take him.
Right?
The lottery is going to be real interesting.
That should be it. Oh.
We're going to have to pay attention to where certain teams fall. Like if the Caps
here,
let's say the Caps fall like 2 seeds behind the Flyers or something. You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe you get on the phone with the Caps. Michkov's here. We want, if you want him, we'll trade back 2 spots. Because the guy that you would have took anyway is going to be there at, wherever the Caps were.
Well, 2 spots. I'm definitely down for that. I mean,
could you imagine the fan freak out if the Flyers trade away the pick that drafts Michkov and he ends up coming over in a year and he develops into this all-time great goal scorer?
Yeah.
And knowing them, they'll trade him to a division rival. Probably even worse.
Yeah.
I just hope whatever they do, they have a plan for it. And, I use this word a lot. If you're going to do something, do it with conviction. Don't half-ass. You know what you're going to do and do it. And don't flip-flop.
Yeah, it's going to be the draft's going to be very interesting. I mean, above and beyond the picks that they make, they're going to be making some trades. So
yeah, let's do it. Yeah. All right, Dan. I guess the last question we have for you before we let you go here: who's winning the Stanley Cup?
I like Dallas.
All right. I
like Dallas. I think they're coming out of the West. I'm a big fan of the way that they play, so I'll go with them to win the cup. I almost said Toronto. I just can't even bring myself to say it.
Because it's a sexy pick, but Dallas might be. They're not one of the more fun teams to watch, but they're built.
I like Dallas. So. Yeah, I like them a lot. So
it's a good answer there. So Dan, thank you for hanging out, man. I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Travis, Jack, Jim, it's always fun.
All right, buddy.
Always a pleasure,
thanks,
Dan.
buddy.
Appreciate it.
All right. Have a good night, guys.
You
Take
too.
it easy.
You too.
Yep, sounds good.
Man, the myth, the legend, good friend Dan Silver. So a lot of prospects coming up. It's going to be interesting. The lottery is a week. Was it Monday or Tuesday?
I think
Monday.
A week from today. That's a massive night, boys.
Oh my God.
A massive night. Yeah.
I think we'll have to go live after the lottery.
Yeah. I think
I'm going to go live off a cliff.
So, Russ will be joining us for that. Mr. Russ Cohen will return. He's attending the. Did I mention this on the show already? I can't remember. I don't want to repeat myself. He's doing the Devils Rangers game tonight at the Prudential Center. He's covering the game, so he'll return with us next weekend to once again talk about the draft picks and I'm sure the lottery, of course. So, one more comment here I want to get in before we change gears. From Carts 88, I'm running to pick Benson. I'd be down to trade back, though, depending on who's there. This is going to be one of those drafts, I think, where we actually do see some trades go down.
I thought it was a little interesting. He compared Will Smith to Kevin Hayes in the work ethic type of thing. Second time I've heard that in the last 7 or 8 days.
Dude, I said that. I think the same day that Dan said it, or almost around the same time. I don't want to say I said it first, but I think I did. I'm watching this guy play, and I'm like, am I watching Kevin Hayes? Like he's moving in slow motion, like he's very skilled with the puck. So like I'll say this about the guy. He's not the fastest skater. Like I feel like I'm watching him in slow motion. And somebody even came out to say, I can't believe you're watching this kid play. And the first thing you think is something negative. It's not negative. It's just an assessment. I'm not saying this kid doesn't have skill with the puck. He's doing all these things because he's good. But I feel like I'm watching a guy skate in slow motion. That's all I said.
You know what it is? It's one of those things where I just hope part of me just get picked before we pick. I'd rather be somebody else's treasure or detriment. I'd rather just not deal with it. Just go before and we'll gladly pick who falls to us at that point because there's so much talent. I'd rather not deal with it. And because the fan base is going to be completely cut in half if it comes to Will Smith. I'm telling you, it's going to be a war like it always is, but it's going to be multiplied tenfold.
Will Smith is one of those guys where I'll have to be proven wrong. Kind of like Noah Cates, Owen Tippett, Morgan Frost, because I won't be on board. I'll kind of be like, all right, well, I hope he pans out. I hope he's good. Whereas if they draft one of these other guys, Leonard, Moore, whoever, Benson, one of these other guys that can go around where they could pick, I'm going to be excited because I see this. You see the skill there clearly, and they can move, which gets everybody excited, gets the guys going.
Can I add something real quick that Russ Cohen tweeted about 42 minutes ago?
Sure.
And if anybody alluded to this, I apologize. It says, getting word that CSKA GM said he expects Ivan Fedotov back from the Army to play for his team for the rest of his career. #Flyers.
Whoops.
Huh.
That's not good.
Yeah. #KHL as well.
Kind of sucks, but I feel like not expected, but that's kind of what we were all leaning towards.
You could see that playing out like that. Yeah, that's kind of a bummer.
Thank God for Harrison, huh?
Yeah, really. Well, that kind of drives us into one of our next topics here, right? So earlier today, and now I lost the guy's name. Let me bring it back up here. So there was a KHL player who terminated his contract with Avangard Omsk of the KHL and joined the Washington Capitals. He's now free to join the Capitals. His name is Ivan Miroshnichenko. Terminated his contract with his KHL team, and he's now free to play for the Caps. 19 years old. Trav, you said this kid could have been the steal of the draft last year.
Yeah, it's kind of what a lot of the experts said. Had cancer, started slipping in the draft, but I heard from two different people, steal the draft right there.
See, that to me is interesting. And then, I was going to actually kind of talk about Fedotov and Michkov a little bit, but excuse me, Jack just dropped that bomb.
Yeah.
Breaking news with Fedotov, and it's kind of like, well, okay, I guess there is still going to be some trouble with Russia next season.
Not if you're Washington.
Yeah, if the Flyers aren't on the phone already, like there needs to be something in place. Like, hey, if Michkov's available when we pick, do we have something worked out?
No, we take him. We're not moving back. We're taking him.
To Dan's point, if it's Washington, they definitely take him because they know they can 100% get him over here. Putin and Ovechkin are like two peas in a pod, man. Like they get whatever they want. We've seen it. There's no issues there.
Yeah. It's going to be an interesting draft. It's already, you can kind of already foreshadow some things playing out. But just wanted to bring that up on the show because that was a thing. And, if you have an Ovechkin or somebody like that on your team that can work that out, maybe Michkov comes over sooner than we think. Unfortunately, it's going to be to a Metro team. All right, next topic real quick. Let's kind of blow through some of these. So Jeff Marek on his show, I think it was on Friday.
Jeffy.
Was it Friday, Trav, where he brought up Blake Wheeler and maybe the Flyers could be a team that trades for him. They trade Ryan Ellis's contract to take on Blake Wheeler. What did you guys think of that? Because when I heard that, I didn't think it was crazy. I thought it would have been weird for Wheeler. I'm not sure of his contract, if he has like no trades or whatnot.
Got a limited one.
All right. So you want to kind of expand on that a little bit, Trav? What'd you think about that?
I think it makes no sense at all for the Jets side of things. Blake Wheeler's still a good player, and it's not like he's making like 10 mil, Like, I don't think he has negative value. I do think Wheeler's gone from the Jets, but like, just trade him for a second round pick. Why are you taking on Ryan Ellis's deal? It makes zero sense to me.
So all right. So my whole thing too was if the Jets can, because I think this was the whole thing, right? Like the Jets can LTI arm and create cap space or something. I'm like, well, why can't the Flyers just do that then and open up whatever amount of cap space that is, right?
I'm not sure you're.
I don't know. It doesn't make sense to
How do you
me.
explain it? I get, okay, you're opening up cap space. So, like, yeah, if Ryan Ellis is making $6 million on your active roster and you put him on LTIR, well, yeah, you free up $6 million. But, like, why would the Jets take on that $6 million just to cancel it out, later when the season starts? That makes no sense.
Yeah, if I'm the Jets,
And you have to deal with that cap hit during the offseason. You can only go 10% over the cap.
That hinders you. We've seen that in Philly.
Yeah.
If he had like 3 years left, maybe I could, he's got 1 year left.
Wheeler, you mean?
Wheeler, he's got 1 year left. Ellis has what, 4?
Let me
3?
just double check. I
Yeah,
think
like
that's it.
I'd understand it. Like Anthony DeMarco kind of threw it out there. Someone like Tyler Myers might have negative value at this point in time with his 100% cap hit. So that I could see the Canucks maybe thinking, okay, well, we can get out of the Tyler Myers deal. We're trying to compete next year. That way you free up cap to add someone. But like, if the Jets are trying to get rid of Wheeler, just trade him for a second round pick, and then you get that cap out of there, and then you can use that whatever you want.
Even if they ate money,
you don't need to involve
year.
Ryan Ellis if you're the Jets.
Yeah, even if he ate money for a year and you reset the deck for a year, like that makes so much more sense than nailing yourself down to a guy that you're going to have to eat money in a way in the offseason, which is not good. Like, even if you can put him on an IR, long LTIR, what if somebody else gets hurt too? Like, you're just hindering yourself for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't make a whole lot. As for the Flyers, I think it would be great. I don't care if he plays. I just am like, or he fits. I'm like, yeah, you take him on. You're not doing shit next year, and you move him at the deadline for something, and then you are out of Ellis's contract. Like, it'd be a blessing, if anything. But for Winnipeg, it doesn't make any sense to me.
And then someone like Tyler Myers, then, the Flyers acquire Tyler Myers at his full cap hit, let's say, help the Canucks out. You're helping us out as well. You give us a draft pick maybe. And then at the deadline, you could flip Tyler Myers, retain half his salary, big bottom pair defenseman at maybe, I think he's making $6 million.
So he got 1 year left?
Yes. So you retain 50, that's 3, and then the daily cap hit, it's under $1 million by the time of the deadline. Yeah, a team would give you an asset for that, you would think, as long as he's playing.
You go knock on the door of one of those teams that was interested in Ristolainen, and take what you can get, and you get some assets. Like, we're not doing anything next year. We all know this.
I think that's a creative thing Danny could do to bring in assets.
Smart GMs do that. That's how they create assets.
But the Blake Wheeler one doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Yeah, really not from Winnipeg standard. That just seems silly for Ellis. Like, that's just dumb.
So are they trading Ellis to Vancouver for Tyler Myers?
No, so Anthony DeMarco from the fourth period, he said, this was a couple of days ago, maybe the Flyers should trade Ellis to Vancouver for Myers. Has nothing to do with Wheeler.
Right. So, but what's the difference between that trade and the Myers trade?
Because Blake Wheeler's actually like a good player. Like, there's no reason for the Jets to take on Ryan Ellis's contract.
More money too, I believe.
Right. So then, okay. So, makes once again, like, okay. So you're saying they're trading a negative player in Myers. So it makes sense in that way, but they're taking on 3 more years of a contract in Ryan Ellis still.
I'll be honest, but
a team for them, it kind of makes sense because you are putting Ellis on LTIR. You're gaining cap space. You're getting rid of Myers' contract, and then the Ellis money doesn't matter for you in season. So you're getting rid of a negative player and freeing up cap. But for the Jets, Blake Wheeler's not a negative in my mind. I don't think he has negative value.
I understand the negative and positive value, but as far as where those teams are, neither trade makes sense to me, really. Like in Vancouver, are they really, what are they going for next year?
I think so.
That's just stupid.
I know, and
honest.
I agree with you. And the
Yeah.
Vancouver situation, it just sounds like the Flyers, they're like 1 year behind the Flyers. Like at the deadline,
I didn't know it was possible to be behind the Flyers, but okay.
It's actually insane. They said aggressive retool. That was their words.
Oh,
Aggressive
that
retool at the
worked over
deadline.
so well. Look, if you want to take advantage of another team's stupidity, by all means do it. And there are certain teams that have to make money. Columbus is a perfect example of this. Back when they signed, there was a player for Boston. He went to Florida. Eventually they got him, but he had head injuries. And I can't believe I can't remember his name.
Boland?
Who was that?
Boland?
No, it was like, oh God, it's gonna kill me.
Savard?
No, you're close though. He's a forward. So anyway, like that player was hurt; he couldn't play, and Toronto signed David Clarkson, who was a massive bust. So they have to play him. He's not hurt. Meanwhile, Columbus has this guy on IR, and they swapped the players. And I was like, why would Columbus do that? Why would Columbus take a guy who's on IR, long-term IR, for David Clarkson, who's making a lot of money but playing? Well, because Toronto is going to take that player and throw him right on the IR and use that money elsewhere, where Columbus doesn't have the money that these top market teams have. They need that money on the ice. They cannot afford to have that money on the LTIR because you got to pay it out of your pocket. Whether it counts against your cap is irrelevant. They have to pay that money. So that's why they made that trade. In certain teams, maybe like Vancouver, who I've heard, they need that money on the ice. They're not exactly spending for the sake of spending, so which again doesn't make a whole lot of sense with Ellis. I think that idea from Anthony DeMarco came from him and not anything legit, because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. While Myers may be a negative asset, I don't think they're bringing on extra money to pay when they may believe that they are not only taking on that money they have to pay, but then they're going to spend it elsewhere when they have a horrible situation right. Well, maybe not horrible, but bad situation right now. There's too many factors in that just don't strike true with me.
I'm going to say something here. I think Winnipeg is closer to a teardown than Vancouver is. And I think I'm going to say it this way to maybe make it make sense a little bit more. I think Vancouver is closer to winning a cup than Winnipeg is. It sounds weird to say because Winnipeg was just
it's not. Winnipeg's older.
And I think they're done.
I think the players they have, they're older. And Hellebuck has said, I want to play for a cup team. I want to compete for a cup. I don't want to go through a rebuild. So he's trying to punch his ticket out of there. Dubois, it would surprise me if he's a guy that's like, I want out too.
Keep going because he does. He does. So
yeah, everybody else is old.
So all these players are signed. Yeah, so there's your negative value, because I was going to get to that. That's your negative value. He's making 8.25.
Okay.
Yes. I mean that's he's the highest paid player on the team, and he's an asshole. He's like Jake Voracek. It's time. Sure, he's a good guy. He's at the end of his rope here. It's time to move on. I don't know. He's 30. He's going to be 37 years old next season, Blake Wheeler. So he's no spring chicken. I don't know if you can get a pick for him or not. Right? It's
interesting.
So maybe he does have I'm trying to. This is not me advocating for this. I'm trying to see the side from Marek's perspective, because when I heard that, I'm like, okay, in theory that makes sense, but why would Winnipeg take on Ellis's contract, if they can't LTIR him until the regular season? And I guess if you're putting a scenario out there like that, you're assuming that, Winnipeg is going to make some major changes this season. They made the change with the coach, with Bowness in there, and first round exit yet again. Even the guys that they could potentially build around for future. I'm looking at Kyle Connor, 26 years old. And then Josh Morrissey, amazing season. Jack, you know all about that. Even he's 28 years old. I mean, he just signed a new deal. It's 6.25 for the foreseeable future. But, not exactly a spring chicken there. Hellebuck, Wheeler, Scheifele, all their contracts end after next season. Jack, you mentioned Dubois up already. I think he's gone. I don't think he's too crazy about Winnipeg. And then a bunch of guys, are UFAs and RFAs in Nemesnikov, Carson Coolman here. I mean, just no-name guys.
How long's
now.
Hellebuck got? 1 year?
Yeah, same contract as the other guy, Scheifele, Wheeler. He's up after 2023, 2024. I think he's going to request a trade.
It'll be interesting because I do think they're done with this current core. Do they tear it down or do they do their own style of an aggressive retool? Because you do have guys like Connor and who's the other winger? Ehlers.
Yep.
I mean, maybe you trade Scheifele for another veteran around the same contract and point production, and I don't know.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I'm curious because I think they're done as well with that core for sure. But what route are they going to take?
Right. And I think it makes sense to break it down, but it's not as easy as it sounds. Vancouver strikes me as a team that's like, moving in the mud. Like, I don't know what the hell they're doing. Like, I think acquiring money that they can't use, even if it does go to LTIR, it just doesn't make sense. Just rebuild. Or
so I agree it doesn't make sense, but they said we're retooling, not rebuilding.
So to your point, as much sense as it doesn't make to us, if that's what they're going to do, which is something Vancouver has done, maybe because they have to spend, if they're spending money, it's got to be on the ice. That's how they are. Okay, well, maybe they do something like that. Well, good. Take advantage of that shit. You have to. Toronto did, and Nathan Horton was the player I was thinking of. Yeah. So Nathan Horton, they traded Nathan Horton on the LTIR for David Clarkson because they could put him right on the LTIR and go use that money elsewhere, where Columbus needed that money on ice. They had to. They can't afford it. All these teams don't operate the same way. And that's a perfect example of that. So maybe Vancouver has their own idea of that, but I just feel like putting Ellis on their LTIR and spending that money, that's a head scratcher.
I do kind of hope they trade Ellis if he can never play again, which it sure seems like that's the case. I hope they do that this offseason because I'm wondering, the Coyotes have made such a shit show out of continually doing this, and a lot of teams around the league aren't happy, and I think they're going to try complaining and getting a rule changed. I mean, how are you allowed to trade injured players anyway? Like, shouldn't that not be allowed? Like,
some of the greatest players in the NHL have played for the Coyotes.
Prongs, Datsuk.
They actually haven't played for them, but they have been traded to that team. Hey, let's get that trade in before they change that rule.
Yes.
Or before that team moves.
Seriously. All right, boys. So we're almost an hour and a half in. Let's take maybe 2-3 more minutes so we can catch the end of the Sixers and the rest of the playoff game there.
Basketball guy?
No. Once they get to the second round, then I'll watch the fourth quarter. But
in the last 2 minutes they're in play.
Yeah. Okay. So Flyers still have not decided on their front office staff here, and put out a quick article the other day. If you listen to the shout out to the Stick to Hockey podcast, Jason Martinez, our buddy Anthony DeMarco was on there. He put out some candidates. I'll just read off the list here really quick. Cami Granato was a name that was mentioned. Former Flyer and captain Dave Poulin was interviewed earlier in the week. DeMarco states that more interest has been shown by Poulin than Comcast. He said that was more Poulin lobbying for himself, which honestly I like. If a guy wants to be here, he wants to improve the team. All right, I'll give this guy a shot. Let's give him an interview and see how he does.
Great captain, by the way.
Yeah, I think Flyers. Well, I would assume because he did play for the Flyers that Flyers fans would love him. I like that stuff. Whereas there's a growing faction or a growing section of Flyers fans who, just because he put on the sweater before, people don't like him. But another name, Scott Mellenby, who former Flyer, was interviewed. This is going back. Yep, going back.
He's
2
more
weeks
known
now
as the Panther, if that makes anybody feel better.
Yeah, seriously, yeah. He was interviewed, I think, 2 weeks ago now. The organization has a lot of respect for Mellenby, states DeMarco. Flyers scouting department prefers Mellenby. So there you go. That's interesting. So the scouting department's lobbying for Scott Mellenby. And a couple other candidates here, Doug Wilson, Cami Granato, and Emily Castonguay. I was told that Castonguay is no longer being considered.
Heard that as well.
Yeah, that was a couple weeks ago. So, yeah, I'm not sure how serious of a candidate Doug Wilson is. It'd be cool to see Doug Wilson.
Got way too much experience. And just first thing, we have a brand new GM. So I want a president who has a lot of experience. That's my first kind of check off the checklist. Dude, the Sharks were good. They never won a cup, but they were very good.
They should have. They
Under
were
his
that team. They
control
were like
for
the
a
Flyers of
long
old. They were always there. Yeah.
for a
Yeah, West
long
Coast
time. They
Flyers.
were really good under his control. That's
So my
kind of
question
the
is,
guy I
I've seen
want.
a lot of rumors that it was president or GM, and that seems silly to me. This is just president, right?
I'm
Not
like
gonna replace
90.
Briere already or move him out.
I would say that Briere is definitely. I'm not sure what they're waiting for to take off the interim tag, but what was also mentioned is that they're going to kind of have like a three-headed monster kind of thing. Like each person's going to manage their own department, whereas
What are the departments?
Briere is going to be the general manager, so obviously he handles all that stuff on his own. And then they're going to have the president of hockey operations, which is the position that they're looking to fill. What they're looking for in this candidate is they're looking for somebody who's good with marketing, somebody who can help fix the salary cap. There was one more thing here, guys. I'm sorry. I closed
Why is
up
Barry
my-
Hanrahan still employed? If they need to
Question.
continue to fix the cap over and over and over again, why is this guy still got a job?
Very
And
good
who are they
question.
hiring to spell people's names right?
Here we go. So on the three-headed monster here, will not be a traditional hockey operations hire. This person will not be Danny Briere's boss. According to Anthony, the three will basically manage their different departments and report back to Dan Hilferty, who will very much have his finger on the pulse of the team and I guess operations. He wants to properly distribute responsibility. Personally, I love that strategy. I think when people have less, I guess, to worry about and they can focus on the things that really matter under what falls under them, I think you can maximize, their ability. So I think, who said that things have to be a certain way? I'm totally fine with that. And if somebody, I guess, grows along the way that says, hey, I'm capable of managing, these two departments, Valerie Camillo can hit the road kind of thing. I'm just using that as an example, nothing against Valerie Camillo, but she would be part of that three-headed monster, I should mention. So I thought that was interesting. It's so whoever's hired as president of hockey ops is not necessarily Briere's boss. It's kind of like the co-manager type thing there. So yeah, that was
Briere
all.
can just focus on the team and not sales. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, seriously. And, it was mentioned during the show that all of that fell under Chuck Fletcher. And, maybe
He
that
folded
was
like a lawn chair.
a little bit too much responsibility. It proved to be, so
Jesus Christ.
yeah. All right, boys. Anything that you think we missed during this episode that we want to kind of mention before we wrap it up?
I got 2 Ryan Whitney comments I want your opinions on.
Okay.
First one's relevant because we talked about the playoffs. Bigger collapse. All right. Tampa, Columbus, or Boston, Florida?
Okay, Trev.
I'm saying bigger collapse. I'm going Boston last night just because they were up 3-1 in the series. And
Jim?
and they were better than the Tampa Bay Lightning record-wise. So, yeah.
Good
that's
argument. Ryan Whitney agrees with you. Jim?
So for argument's sake, I'll take Tampa Bay because the question was bigger upset,
Yeah.
Or bigger collapse.
bigger collapse. Was it bigger collapse?
I feel like both are the same
Okay.
in a sense.
All right. So even still, okay, bigger collapse.
If
I'll
you
go.
want to change your answer, Travis, I understand. But I feel like what was the biggest shock to you? What was the biggest upset?
I thought Tampa Bay was like unbreakable. Like they were just an immovable object. And then Columbus swept them. All right. If you want to talk maybe most shock, I'll phrase it like this: most shocking. Like Columbus had no business sweeping them. Not just winning the series, but sweeping the Tampa Bay Lightning. John Tortorella's Columbus Blue Jackets. They didn't have any stars on that team. Did they have Panarin? I don't think they had Panarin on that team.
Yeah.
They did have
That was
Panarin.
one of his last years.
Panarin,
All right.
Bob,
They had
Duchesne,
Bob, but
Werenski, Jones. That team's better than I think we kind of remember.
Yeah,
They shouldn't have
However-
won that series. Don't get me wrong, but they're better than we remember.
true.
Josh Anderson was still a good player then.
That's true. I forgot they had him as well, and Borkstead and whatnot. But I'm still gonna lean with Jim, and it's because Florida's really good. Florida was did they not have the best record in the league last year? You know, like they're a really good team. But a lot of what Ryan Whitney said was like, oh, they were up 3-1. They couldn't finish them. There's nothing more dangerous than the team facing elimination. You know, you have nothing to lose. You know, and I feel like that's what bit Boston. They just couldn't put them away. But credit to Florida. You know, they didn't want to be put away, and they gave it all they had. I think it's really close. It's a really good question. But I'm going to lead Columbus over Tampa because Tampa started that series up 3-0 in the game, and it was Columbus from there on out. They never gave them a chance.
I forgot about that. Tampa was up 3-0.
And I can't believe they swept them. Boston actually was like, they were in game 7 at least, and Florida was a lot better than, maybe not a lot, but significantly better than Columbus. And it proved for how good they were last year. I mean, this is all opinion based.
Columbus absolutely beat the shit out of Tampa Bay too.
Boston was a better regular season team, but by a couple of games. So it's like arguing Golden State versus the 97 Bulls at that point. You know,
and that series, I think, was the reason Tampa Bay went on to win back-to-back cups, because you know why? They went out and got guys like Perry, Shen, Bogosian.
They learned a lot.
Court said, this is our fault. We created a monster.
It's true, yeah.
But the only difference, Boston won't do that because they can't manipulate the cap unless you see like Bergeron or Krejci or somebody just go out with injury for half the year. But again, they can't, you know, they don't get cheaper money like Florida does. So am I bitter about that? Maybe.
It sounds like.
So let me ask you this. Throw the 2010 Bruins and Flyers series in there. You still picking the same, or?
Flyers were picked to go to the Cup before that season started, so it's tough. They actually picked Chicago and Flyers at the beginning of that season, which is crazy because the Flyers barely made the playoffs. So, but because when they didn't have the goaltending, so I'll still say because the Flyers belonged in that series. I never saw them come back from 3-0, obviously.
Rigged. But, speaking of rigged, did you guys see last night when the Panthers scored that tying goal with a minute left? Did you see the I saw the scoreboard flash goal for the Panthers, and I'm like, that's really odd. Are they using the scoreboard from the stadium? Because, you know, you're watching the game, you're usually 20 seconds behind real time. And when I saw the Florida Panthers thing flash goal, I'm like, oh, that somebody forgot to change that. And I'm like, I bet you there's going to be a goal. And sure enough, 20, 30 seconds later, Panthers ended up tying the game. There's a lot of people out there with the conspiracy theories, yada, yada.
That's
Flyers
you.
getting Bedard. Here we go.
Flyers getting Bedard. That's how I took it too, Jack. Yep.
So the other Ryan Whitney thing was, this is just personal opinion of this. Adults wearing hockey jerseys with players' names on them. Like, oh, how could you be 39 years old having a Kachuk jersey? You're a douchebag. So how do you feel about that?
So I'll take the opposite perspective on this one.
Well, I got a rack right here with 25 jerseys right next to me.
Do you wear them though?
A lot of them. There's a couple of them I have signed that I don't wear. But I've been wearing the Maple Leafs jersey. I wear my Danny Briere, my Giroux jersey pretty often, my Bryce Harper.
All right, so how about this? Because I think that we're all probably going to agree that, you know, you can wear jerseys at any age. I draw the line, though. I think autographed jerseys should not be worn out. You got it autographed, now it should go somewhere nice. Hang it up on a rack or put it on a wall. I don't like when people wear the autographed jersey out, because if you get that dirty, it's like, well, what'd you get it autographed for?
Yeah.
You know, that's my opinion.
Agree with that. I have a World Series Stott jersey, and I bought it to get signed. It's never been worn once.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. A lot of people collect jerseys, so I'm fine with that. But like, come on, not wearing a jersey to a hockey game? Like, I'm surprised this man played hockey and made this comment. It's very silly to me. Now, I understand there's some little, like, if it's signed, if it's that, totally understand. But dude, I'm buying a Trey Turner jersey and I'm going to wear it. And I'll even, never mind, I almost said something really inappropriate. I'm not going to do that. But I'm going to wear that jersey proudly. It's fun. Who doesn't wear a jersey to a game?
You know,
like, I'll argue that when people put their own last name on it, that's silly to me.
Yeah.
I'm like, who the hell is Camarillo? Like, what the fuck is that? You know, like, that to me is more silly. I'm like, what guy? In a sense, I thought about buying my dad a jersey. I was like, I can't see him wearing that. Like, you know what I mean? But at the same time, like, who doesn't wear a jersey? I've been wearing jerseys my whole life. I'm gonna keep wearing jerseys. That's why they sell them.
My dad was one of those guys growing up.
Well, they don't
My
just
dad
make
was
kid sizes. They're for adults. There's big and tall. There's all sorts of jerseys. That's what you do. It's part of everything. If I see like my guy that I have a Carter Hart jersey, if I saw him, I'm not gonna melt and freak out. Oh my God, my hero! It's not gonna be like that. It's just a jersey. Who doesn't wear a jersey? To me, it was. I kind of understood, but at the end of the day, it was a pretty stupid comment, especially coming from a hockey player.
If you don't want to wear a jersey, that's fine. But like,
there's nothing wrong with it.
Why the hell can't anyone else?
Why? How do you think they sell them, make money? It's just you're not going nuts or anything. And I totally agree about if you get something really nice, you get signed. I wouldn't wear that either. I would keep that away. But like if I'm wearing a jersey because I like the player, like, or because I think it looks nice, that's the main reason why I do it, because they look sharp, they look nice. I'm not going to buy any of this new crap. I promise you that. But like if I go out and buy a Trey Turner jersey because I like the old school style of jersey with the new player that we just signed, like, what am I going to feel bad about myself or something?
Part of me wouldn't mind though if we could all go to suits in our sport. I mean, go to games in our sport jackets and our little game hat there, our racing hat, and smoke our cigarettes while the players are playing out on the ice. I wouldn't mind going back to those days, honestly.
What was those days?
Smoking my cigar. Just all you see is a big.
Well, if they let me smoke
over the arena,
then, there's a lot going. I would change.
You never saw those pictures of like the old school baseball games where everyone's just wearing a suit.
Well,
I think that'd be cool.
Coaches wanted to do that too, like Vince Lombardi wearing a suit, and now they got to wear team attire and can't do that anymore. But like, it was such a head scratcher to me. It's like, this is exactly why they sell them. Like, yeah, it's true. I mean, who are they selling to if not a majority of like young adults to adults? Like kids, the kids, you're buying it for your kid. Very rarely are kids like, I'm collecting 5 jerseys. Okay, good. Your daddy must own a bank. Like, I can't afford authentic jerseys unless I'm buying them from China. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, pretty soon you'll be able to buy them from here because China will own the U.S., so you're good.
I'm just saying, it seemed like a very, very stupid, odd comment to come from a former player.
Yeah, I think he was just trying to drum up exactly what he drummed up.
I think you're right.
I think so too.
I think you're exactly right. But he should be called out for it because he's being a little bitch.
And he played for the Penguins, so yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
it is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard.
It's silly, and it would.
And you hear it like once every like couple months. Someone says it and it blows up on social media, and then it's like, okay, dies down. A month later, someone else says it, everything blows up.
Yep. Why for a guy from Spittin' Chicklets to pick up on that's been said before? It must be a slow season. Oh, wait a minute, it's the playoffs. I guess not. That's weird.
Yeah. All right, boys. Anything else? Hey, by any chance, do you guys collect hockey cards? I just got into. I don't want to say even got into this
all the time.
There's a new show on Netflix. I can't remember what it's called. It's like some auction show. It actually takes place in Runnymede, New Jersey. There was somebody on the show. I was like, I know this person. Where do I know them? Went on Facebook and I was like, oh shit, I know who that is. Anyways, I'm watching this show and they're selling baseball cards and whatnot. And there's this one scene where what do they call it? Pulling open a pack or something like that. And he's got Jake Paul on the show, and they're like ripping open like $350,000 box of Pokemon cards, and I'm like, yeah. Do I need to get into this because that looks like a lot of fun?
It's not.
Well, right behind this pole, you can't see it, but I have 2 binders right there. One's Flyers, one's Phillies.
So I inherited from my dad 4 binders worth of hockey cards and 2 like big boxes, but they're all like cheap. And I had my own big collection as well growing up. I got out of it for years. I got back into it. I bought 1 Flyers rookie card, and because of who that player was, I'm out. Can you guess that player?
Nolan Patrick?
Nailed it.
Player.
Wow.
I would never bite your tongue, Jim.
Yeah, it's not worth very much anymore. I've thought about buying one too.
I put it in my friggin' bike and just let it hit every like jerk off.
I pulled an Adam Fox in my first pack, rookie card.
See, I kind of
that's sick.
I
Yeah,
kind of
That
miss
thing's
it.
probably worth some.
No, my
$50.
favorite story was my dad and I went to the store to get hockey cards, and there was this really nice Dominic Hasek card. It was all sparkly and shit. He buys it. He just buys the card straight up. It was like just shy of $200. Back in like the mid 90s, that was like more like $400.
Yeah, man.
He buys a pack. It's in the fucking pack. Now we have 2 of them.
Well, sell one.
Well, one I'm keeping because Dominic Hasek's the greatest goalie of all time.
That's what I'm saying. Sell one,
I'll
keep
fight
the
you.
other.
I will fight you on that. But yeah, I got it. The other one somewhere. So once I go through that shit, I'll be selling that.
I was into it a lot when I was like 10, 11, 12 years old, and then I kind of grew out of it. And then during the pandemic, I found some website, and like you have to sign up for it. It is free, but like there's like rules and stupid shit. But you like it has players' addresses on there, and you
What?
send them a card in the mail, put another envelope in there with a stamp so they can send it back to you, and they sign it, and like everyone kind of posts their success rates and different players and their success rates. Like Chris Pronger, if you send them, you're getting your card back. But if you send to someone like I don't know, a random name, RJ Umberger, you know, it might be a 22% success rate or something like that. So I actually did that during the pandemic and started getting back into it a little bit. It was pretty cool.
Wow, that's really interesting.
That sounds pretty cool, doesn't it?
So let me tell you one thing. I got a card feud going on. So Jim, you remember Rob kind of started the podcast with us? He hated Steve Mason.
Oh,
So I liked him. We would argue all the time. So we would go back and forth giving each other the Steve Mason card, whether it was a birthday, whatever. So he's getting married in September. I'm trying to get this card in replace of on his wedding cake in replace of the bride. You think I can pull it off? You think I can pull that off?
If anybody can, you can, Jack.
I'll send you a picture when I do it.
Yeah, please do.
I think that I would win, right? That's the end of it, right?
Yeah. Just friggin' Steve Mason was on the top of his
You
friggin'
pull out
wedding
the
cake.
wedding cake and it's a groom and Steve Mason card.
Money Mace.
He'll never watch this, so I'm good.
He better watch it. Original member of the show.
He loves Dave Haxel.
From
He
down
doesn't talk
under.
shit on
Oh,
him, so.
jeez. Why are you friends with this guy?
Hates Steve Mason. He really didn't like Dave Haxel, but he's trying to get under my skin.
All right, boys. We're hour and 46, almost 47 minutes into the show. Trav,
That's
any
it?
final thoughts there? Are we done?
I think we're done here, buddy.
I think I've wasted your time enough.
No, no, don't say that, Jack. This was a great show. Powerhouse show, almost 2-hour show.
True.
Yeah, let's wrap this one up. I think, yeah, we're done. All right, everybody. So thanks to Dan Silver for hanging out with us. We'll be back next Monday night, the night of the NHL Draft Lottery, where the Flyers, hopefully, you better be saying your prayers or praying to your higher power, whoever you're, saying your prayers to, or whoever you pray to, whatever you do. Say your prayers all week long for Connor Bedard. We'll be back next Monday with the Draft Lottery. Russ Cohen. We'll be back on the show for episode number 2, and we'll be breaking down the rest of the top 10 NHL draft picks, and probably some other more. Russ has great insight. So until then, everybody have a great night. Enjoy your drink your green stuff, take your vitamins, and Andrew snuck a comment, and we'll get to your comment next week, Andrew. Thanks for hanging out once again.
Remember that. That's a good question. Remember that.
Yeah, that is a good one. So we'll, watch next week, Andrew. We'll answer that one. Thanks again. Everybody have a good night. And let's go Flyers and Sixers.
Jason Bacashua.
Oh, you bastard.
Oh,
Bob froze.
All right.